I've heard that your brain shrinks. Is that true?
What do you
Do
think?
brains shrink? Is that why you have? I've heard like that's why you have a headache. Is because like your brain shrinks. I don't know if that's true. Like, is that just like a phrase we use, or is your brain actually physically shrinking?
Hi, I'm Ryan. I'm a science teacher.
I'm Cheryl, and I slept through science.
Each episode will tackle a science question you may have learned in school, but can't quite remember or fully explain.
And I'll take the risk of asking the dumb questions so that we can all understand the science we slept through.
The bell has rung. Let's get started. Welcome to Lesson 51. We are in our holidays unit, and I think this might be our last episode in our holidays unit, Cheryl.
It sure is, Ryan. First of all, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year!
Happy New Year!
Yay!
Happy New Year of the annual calendar. Happy New Year of a first year completing in this podcast. That was a very weird way that I said that. But we
was very
completed
weird.
1 year of this podcast.
Yeah,
which
a year's
is really
worth
cool.
of lessons. Yeah.
Yes.
It's crazy. 52, one per week. 52 weeks, 1 year. There you go.
So good. Yeah, it's been fantastic. But this holiday unit has been really fun. With the holidays, it's always kind of like a bittersweet thing. I feel like seeing them come to an end because they're so fun. And then it's like, oh, now the things are done. But then also you can kind of get that like, and you as an introvert, I'm especially guessing, can get kind of that like post-holidays hangover a little bit, just of like, there's been a lot of stuff now. Like we need to like let our headache rest and chill out a little bit, maybe.
Spend less time with people.
Yeah, take a nap, rehydrate, For some people, sometimes it's also like just a real physical hangover in addition to like a post-holiday hangover where like after New Year's, heavy night of drinking for some, and then the next day you're not feeling so hot. So my question, Ryan, is why do hangovers happen?
Because you drink too much.
Yes, but
oh,
why?
Is that not what you mean?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So you want to know about hangovers and why? What is actually going on that makes you feel lousy?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Well, for our pre-assessment, let's start with a couple of things. Let's just start with you sort of defining some of the common symptoms of a hangover.
Okay. They suck, first of all.
Okay. Suckage. Got it.
Suckage. Yep. I would say headache, being lethargic.
Okay.
Nausea. And then dehydration. I know that like that's a lot of the cause of it is just dehydration, but then also there's like the feeling of being dehydrated, I think you could say is also a symptom.
What does that feel like?
I mean thirsty, but like what does it feel like to be dehydrated? Just like gross. And I'm trying to think of how
that's really
dry.
helpful. Gross. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know how else to describe that, but yeah, dehydration. I feel like
those are kind of the major symptoms, you think?
Yeah.
Okay. And would you say that they all happen simultaneously, or is there a sequence or a progression that they go through?
Ooh, I think there's a progression.
Okay.
That usually ends in puking.
With the hangover, not just the night when you're doing your heavy drinking.
Maybe I think with the hangover, but sometimes after you puke, you feel a little bit better, but I think like if you wake up with one, that you just feel like really tired and you have a headache, and then it like gets worse as you wake up more and you're more like aware of how bad you feel. And then eventually there's puking. But that's just my personal experience. Maybe other people have another experience with
Okay.
hangovers.
Okay. All righty. Now that we've kind of gleaned what that glorious experience feels like, at least for you.
Yeah, it's really glamorous,
What do you think is actually going on physiologically inside the human body that's leading to some of these symptoms?
Okay, so I feel like in some ways I know more about this than other topics we've covered, but I don't know
Okay.
if I can explain the why behind them.
Okay.
So I know that it's pretty much just dehydration.
Okay.
Um, I've heard that your brain shrinks. Is that true?
What do you
Do
think?
brains shrink? Is that why you have I've heard like that's why you have a headache is because like your brain shrinks. I don't know if that's true. Like, is that just like a phrase we use, or is your brain actually physically shrinking? Um, Also, it's your body, like the throwing up part is your body being like, we put poison in ourselves in the form of alcohol and we need to get it out. And so that's like the body's natural reaction of getting poison out is to puke it out. Um, but I've heard stories of like if people stay enough hydrated while they're drinking, or like this one girl who drank like crazy, but then one of her like friends who worked in the medical field like plugged her in an IV and she was fine in the morning or things like that. So it feels like hydration is like a huge part of that. Um, but like I don't know. Yeah, why would dehydration cause a headache? Is it actually your brain shrinking or something else? I guess that's a
Okay.
big part of it that I'm
Well,
curious
let's ask
about.
a follow-up question then.
Okay.
What does it even mean to be dehydrated?
To lack water?
Okay. But aren't you drinking a lot? So why would drinking a lot make you dehydrated?
Because alcohol, although it's made with water, is dehydrating. But I don't know why.
Okay.
I don't even know what makes anything dehydrating if it's liquid.
Okay.
Yeah, that's weird.
Like I never thought of it that way.
No.
You just made this more complicated. Why did you do that? Okay, so it sounds like the dehydration is kind of the key idea in your understanding, but you're not quite sure why alcohol can be dehydrating or why being dehydrated leads to a headache or being lethargic or feeling thirsty or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. This is going to be interesting, Cheryl.
Okay.
Because there are a whole bunch of different ways to approach this. And to the best of my knowledge, there is not scientific consensus around all of the components of hangovers.
Interesting.
Yes, it is an area of continued research and some disagreement, depending on who you talk to.
And how many beers they've had?
And how many beers they've had, exactly.
Got it, cool.
And I think some of it is an issue of scale or amount, where I think there are a lot. My best understanding is there are many factors that all are working together to cause a hangover. But most of the time when you hear an explanation, you just hear about one of those factors. And so then you try and address one of those factors, whereas it's really multifaceted and there are multiple things going on.
Cool.
I mean, from a biological point, yeah. From an experiential point of view, not so much. It's kind of miserable. Yeah. So I think the best place to start is going to be to talk about what actually alcohol is doing. And you referenced this as far as like nausea and the fact that you get nauseous and throw up because you basically ingested something that is toxic to you.
Yes.
And that is completely true.
Okay.
Yeah. Alcohol, not so good for us in general. Now, there's complicated pieces as far as it goes, but basically what happens is when you drink something that has alcohol in it, your liver filters it out of the blood and breaks it down into other things. And those other things can cause problems when they build up in your blood and in your body.
Okay.
Now, give it enough time, your body can process it. But you've probably heard of alcohol poisoning.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's where you have taken in and consumed so much alcohol quickly enough or over a long enough period of time that your body cannot process it all in a way to actually protect you from the ill effects of it.
Okay.
Okay. So yes, alcohol it can be dangerous. Now, you can also read all these studies that, well, red wine and dark chocolate are actually good for your heart. That's not really what the studies actually say, but we could talk about those later at a different time if you would like to.
But Ryan, the antioxidants.
Right. Yes. Which I'm sure everybody knows what that means. So that's one component is that, yes, if you're feeling nauseous, often it's related to those byproducts. The other big thing that you mentioned was dehydration. And while, yes, alcohol definitely dehydrates you, it is not the sole cause of all of the symptoms of a hangover. It is probably related, and if you are less dehydrated, you may have less of a severe hangover, but it's not quite so cut and dry.
So that's why if you just go a day without having enough water, you don't feel like that the next day to that extreme.
Yes, that's one of the reasons. There's a lot of things, but yes, that is definitely the case. Because yeah, otherwise that would make sense, right? If it's literally just dehydration, then you should feel just as bad with the exact same symptoms when you have a hangover as when you're dehydrated, and you don't.
Yeah.
So there's clearly other things going on.
Yeah.
But dehydration definitely doesn't help the hangover. As a part of that, you asked, well, I guess I asked you and you didn't know, why does alcohol actually cause you to be dehydrated?
Yeah.
And we have to talk about hormones.
Okay.
Okay. So there is a hormone called vasopressin. You know,
Vasopressin.
your favorite hormone. And basically, vasopressin is a hormone that is used to regulate the water level in your blood. Vasopressin, when it's released in your bloodstream, it actually has you retain water, has you hold on to water in your body. So it keeps you from peeing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, alcohol, when you consume alcohol, it reduces the amount of vasopressin that your body releases, which means you hold on to less water and it makes you pee more.
Wait, so that's a real thing? That's not just like a thing in my brain?
No, it actually reduces the amount of vasopressin that your body releases. It's from the pituitary gland in your brain. It actually reduces that, which means you do actually pee more. And that's why people tell you, to drink water as well and all these other things.
Yeah.
And that helps you dehydrate less quickly, but just drinking water is not actually you can't recoup that because your body is not retaining the water. It's not just like, oh, I just got to put more water in. It's actually reducing the amount of water in your blood overall.
Interesting. So it's still smart to drink water.
Yes, it's still smart to drink water for a lot of reasons. One,
but it's
it'll
not
help.
like counterbalancing.
You can't just, as long as I drink enough water, then I won't get dehydrated. That's not really the way it works, because it's not just like I'm dehydrated because I just have less water. This is also why that question that I sort of asked you, you're drinking alcohol, which is mostly water. How can you get dehydrated? It's because you may have also heard the term a diuretic.
Yeah.
Right? Which I always got confused by because I always thought that it was like diarrhea, but it's not diarrhea because it's very, very different. But diuretic if something is a diuretic, it means it makes you pee more. And there's other things like caffeine can be a diuretic. So like coffee and tea
Mhm.
can sometimes be diuretic, like there's all of these things, but something that is diuretic, often it's going to suppress that vasopressin. So you aren't releasing that as much, which means you aren't holding on to quite as much water. And that's why you can get dehydrated much more quickly with alcohol, which then can lead to some of the symptoms of hangover.
Interesting.
And then there's one final thing. You talked about your brain.
Yeah.
And what did you say about the brain?
That it shrinks?
Uh-huh. And what do you think? Do you think that's true? Do you think that the brain shrinks or
I don't
no?
know if your brain really shrinks. Like, that just feels like a really big deal for your brain to shrink.
It feels like a really big deal, so like maybe
Well,
it shouldn't do that?
it sounds like as big of a deal as getting a concussion.
Mm, okay.
Like something changing in your brain. I don't know. It sounds really intense.
It does sound intense. I agree. And I think it all boils down to, what do we mean when we say your brain, quote unquote, shrinks?
Okay.
Because do you remember back earlier in our unit when we talked about brining a turkey?
Yes.
Remember, we talked about the concentration of salt and other things like outside the turkey versus inside the turkey, and where water can move via osmosis from where there's a higher concentration of it to where there's a lower concentration of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that same thing is happening in our cells all over our body, including in our brain.
Okay.
And so if you are reducing the amount of water in your blood, you could potentially reach a point where the concentration of water is higher in your cells than in your blood, which would make the water move out of your cells and into your blood.
Interesting.
So you could actually technically shrink the brain cells, which you could argue does shrink the brain, but not in the sense that I think most people think about it. You're not losing brain cells because they're shrinking. They just have less water in them.
Temporarily.
Yes, temporarily, exactly. Now, most of what I've read says that the effects of that, like if you're just, drinking occasionally, maybe it's doing it, maybe it's not. But prolonged dehydration, where you are dehydrated for a long period of time or an excessive amount, can have some negative effects on brain function due to some of that dehydration and shrinking of the brain cells.
Interesting. So, like me one time having a hangover isn't really about my brain cells.
Not really. No.
So I might have a headache just from being dehydrated, but not because of my brain.
Yeah, it's most likely not from your brain, because the brain itself, and this may sound weird because the brain is all about sensing, it doesn't have any pain receptors at all.
Oh.
The brain can't feel pain in itself. It senses pain in other parts of the body and tells you when things hurt. But that's actually, I don't know if you knew this or not, but when people do brain surgery, oftentimes they'll, cut open part of the skull, and then the person can be awake and they'll touch different parts of the brain. And then the person will respond with like, oh, I smell this, or, oh, I taste this, or whatever. And they can do that to try and find where the right region in the brain is, but they don't feel it. There's no pain. It doesn't hurt. They can't actually feel it because you don't have any of those pain or pressure receptors like you do in your skin.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Interesting.
You're like, I don't know what to do with that information.
That's really interesting and a little creepy. Yeah.
And a little creepy. Well, yeah. So all of that to say, just because your brain is necessarily, even if your brain is shrinking, quote unquote, that's most likely not what's going on with a headache. We don't know completely what causes headaches. That's still a thing that we're still learning and figuring out. Is it actually is it related to the brain? It doesn't seem like it is, but maybe there's components. Does it have to do with like blood pressure or things in your skin or your scalp? Is it referred pain? Lots of different things, and we don't really know completely for sure at this present time.
So that's why my doctor has a hard time telling me why I have headaches then.
Hmm. I mean, dehydration can lead to headaches. That's a real thing,
Absolutely, yeah.
but that's not the only cause of headaches. Stress can lead to headaches too,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? And then you've got migraines, which are a whole nother category of headache. They're technically still headaches, I guess, but they can have very, very different causes than some of those other things. So it's
Yeah.
complex.
Interesting.
And now we get to celebrate New Year's with a New Year's quiz.
Oh, yikes. But I had too much last night and I don't feel good
Well, then this'll
right
be
now.
perfect.
I don't see how.
Hmm. First question. What causes nausea when drinking?
um, your liver processes the alcohol and releases some things in the bloodstream that have negative effects on the body.
And what does that have to do with nausea?
Your body's trying to get rid of it.
Body's trying to get rid of it. There you go.
Yeah.
Body's like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
You can like just remove that from
Yeah.
me. Thank you very much. Next question. What type of molecule is vasopressin?
Hormone.
A hormone. Very good. What does vasopressin do normally under normal conditions, ignoring alcohol?
It regulates the amount of water that your body retains.
Yeah, nice job. And then why does alcohol cause us to be dehydrated?
Because um, it limits vasopressin's ability to do its job, so your body lets go of more water than it should.
Yeah, exactly. In other words, you pee a bunch. Finally, can drinking alcohol cause your brain to shrink?
Kind of. Like your brain cells could, if you had enough of it enough times. But your brain is not shrinking.
Okay, great. There were several ways you could have answered that would have been fine. So nice job.
Thanks.
Now, Cheryl, we are at the end of the holidays, and therefore at the end of
Yes.
our holidays unit, which means it's time to also do our unit reflection.
Nice. I like these more.
You like these more because you can't get a
Yes.
wrong answer?
Yes.
I think it's appropriate too, end of the year, being reflective, back on the year, same sort of a thing, like for a unit.
Yeah, what a lovely story. So
What were some of the things that you found interesting in our holidays unit?
well, I don't really think about science when I think about the holidays.
Okay.
um and like we talked about cooking several times,
Hmm.
and I was like one of those things where like, yeah, cooking or baking, like there's science things happening, but a lot of what I know about that is more just like not hearsay, but you know what I mean? Just like kind of a
Just out there in the world that
yeah,
people say.
yes. Like, and who knows how true that is, or
Hmm.
is it same as saying that your brain shrinks, Um
Hmm.
just kind of these things that we accept as truths that I don't know, have varying levels of truth to them. And so it was fun to learn some more about that. And yeah, I just enjoyed kind of like approaching some of these aspects of the holidays from a scientific perspective. It was really fun.
Nice. What were some of the things that you found challenging in this unit?
Hmm. Um, I think getting to a point in the learning where I could say it back to you and explain it
Hmm.
myself because it made sense. Like everything you taught me was like, cool, makes sense. And then we would do the quiz and I'd be like, Oh, I guess, like, I understood that differently or didn't remember it or just things like that. Like, being able to explain is such a harder thing
Mhm.
than just listening to a thing and being like, "Cool, that checks out," you know?
Mhm. Yep. Welcome to Learning 101. Last reflection question. What concepts do you think you might remember from our unit or might stick with you?
Hmm. Um, well, the next time I drink, I'm gonna be thinking about this unit we just did today and about how no amount of Gatorade will really help me as much as just not having a drink. um, Definitely the snow thing. Like, I mean, just weather's something we interact with a lot, and it's
Mhm.
interesting, like thinking about the different forms of precipitation and what's really going on is really interesting. And, I also now believe in brining.
You believe in it, huh?
I don't know if I believed in brining before. So
Oh,
that's nice.
interesting.
Yes.
Like were like, "Oh, it's sort of a fad," but you didn't think it actually did anything.
Yeah, there's just a lot of cooking things where they're like, "This makes a difference," and you're like, "But does it?"
Mhm.
And it seems like it really does. So, yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, hopefully you're not too bummed that we're done with the holidays and you're ready to move on with the new year. But why don't you go ahead and pack up your stuff and get ready for my closing remarks? You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at I Slept Through Science or on Twitter at Slept Science.
If you have dumb science questions like I do, please send them to us. You can email us at isleptthroughscience@gmail.com, or you can even send us a voice memo and we'll play it on the podcast.
Please rate and review our podcast to tell other people what you think about it, subscribe to make sure you don't miss an episode, and share about our podcast on social media.
Thank you to Beth Reed Miller for the artwork. You can check out more of Beth's artwork at Beth Is Something. Okay, great. Thanks. Bye.
Ah! The bell doesn't dismiss you, I dismiss you.